It was 2:43 a.m. when Nathan's phone lit up. The soft glow cut through the dark silence like a blade. A single message: "We need to talk." The sender: Amelia. Dot. He stared at the screen, numb. She hadn't messaged in weeks. She had left 3 months ago to chase her dream in New York, a theater role she'd claimed would define her. He had supported her, cheered her on. But as days turned to silence and calls dwindled into echoes, doubt settled in. That message cracked something open. Nathan opened their shared photo folder, only to find it empty. All 248 memories gone. Panic surged. He scrolled through her tagged photos. There she was, radiant in a red silk dress, laughing with someone. A man? Not a colleague. Not just a friend. His heart pounded as he zoomed in. Her hand was in his. Nathan whispered to the silence. She left to chase her dream. But it wasn't just a dream, was it? A hollow beat echoed in his chest. The betrayal had a face now, and it wasn't just hers. Nathan stared at the screen long after it dimmed. The echo of her message played on loop in his head. "Amelia, we need to talk." What did it even mean anymore? She had already left. Was this closure, or another wound? He typed, erased, then typed again. Finally he sent. About what? He didn't expect a reply. Not anymore. He remembered the night before she left. Amelia had trembled, excitement and fear colliding in her eyes. She said, "This role could be everything." Nathan had held her, whispered, "And I'll be right here when it is." But he hadn't realized how far everything would take her. He watched the sun peek through the curtains, the golden rays piercing the cold that wrapped around him. The bed beside him was still empty. It had been empty for months, but this morning, it felt truly hollow. His mind wandered to the last time she had smiled at him, not through a screen, but truly, physically present. A rooftop dinner, candles flickering, her laughter twirling in the air like music. "Promise me you won't forget this," Amelia had said. Nathan had sworn it, gripping her hand. But now she'd deleted the pictures, erased even that memory. It wasn't just her body that had moved on. Her soul had shifted. She had rewritten the script of their love story, and he was left holding a role that no longer existed. A lead who'd been cut from the final act. Nathan stared at the photo she posted, her gaze toward the man beside her. It was the same look she used to give him when she believed in him. The most painful part wasn't the betrayal. It was realizing she no longer saw him in her future. He closed the app, needing to breathe, but the walls of the apartment echoed her. Her books still lined the shelf, her mug was still in the sink. The scent of her perfume lingered in the fibers of the couch. It was cruel. Like she had evaporated but left her ghost behind to haunt the ordinary. Nathan picked up the mug, traced the lip with his thumb. How could someone disappear so completely, yet leave so much behind? He wondered if she ever thought of this place. If she thought of him. Or if all this, the books, the memories, the mug, meant nothing. Just placeholders. He didn't cry. Not yet. But the weight in his chest felt like something trying to crush him from the inside. He finally walked to the balcony, the place they used to spend midnight talks and morning coffees. The city was still alive out there, uncaring. He leaned on the railing, eyes scanning the skyline. She's somewhere out there, he thought. Laughing, creating, moving forward. And here he was, stuck in stillness. Nathan said aloud, "I let you go to chase your dream, Amelia. But I didn't know the dream didn't have room for me." His voice cracked slightly. No one heard. But in that moment, a small part of him stopped waiting. It didn't mean he was healed, but it meant the bleeding had begun to slow. The next morning, Nathan opened the drawer beneath his desk and pulled out Amelia's old journal. She had left it behind without a second thought. He had never opened it out of respect, but respect had lost its meaning now. His fingers trembled as he flipped through the pages, ink-drenched memories spilling onto him like ghosts. Words about ambition, fear, love, Him. He believes in me more than I believe in myself. The date was early in their relationship. Then pages turned colder, more distant. Her entries grew shorter. I can't breathe here. I need space. I crave passion. True passion. That last one wasn't about him. He felt it in his bones. It was the first time Nathan realized that she hadn't just fallen out of love, she had been walking away long before she ever boarded that plane. Nathan wandered through the apartment, taking inventory, not of things, but of absences. The little white piano where she used to rehearse was covered in dust. The Polaroids once taped above their bed, now curled and yellowing, corners peeling from the wall. He walked into her studio corner, untouched. Sketches lay scattered on the floor, scripts dog-eared, some with furious red notes. Too safe, not real enough, boring delivery. She had been chasing something wild. He now understood she wasn't running toward her dream, she was running from herself. And maybe, from him. He picked up one of her old monologue scripts and whispered the lines she once rehearsed. I want to be seen for who I am, not who I pretend to be. The irony punched the air out of his lungs. Outside, the world kept spinning. Nathan sat in a coffee shop they used to visit every Sunday. The seat across from him remained empty. The waitress, a familiar face, paused when she saw him. Table for one today? She asked softly. He nodded. Just me. The words clung to the air, awkward and heavy. The waitress placed his coffee gently and added, She used to light up this place. You both did. He gave a faint smile, but his heart collapsed inward. He watched the steam rise from his cup, like memories he couldn't hold on to. Around him, couples laughed, clinked mugs, shared stolen touches. Nathan looked at his reflection in the glass. He barely recognized the man staring back. He had become a ghost sitting in their shared past, pretending it still existed. Later that day, Nathan visited his mother. He hadn't spoken much since the breakup. She opened the door with tired eyes, but pulled him into a hug that cracked the shell around his heart. She's gone, isn't she? She said. He nodded against her shoulder. In her small kitchen, the same one that once hosted Amelia's laughter over burnt lasagna, Nathan finally let go. Tears slipped down his cheeks, silent and stubborn. I thought I was enough, he whispered. His mother cupped his face, her voice steady. You were. You are? She just didn't see it anymore. It wasn't judgment. It was mourning. Not just for a relationship, but for the boy who once believed love alone could be enough. That night, Nathan sat on the floor of his apartment, surrounded by open boxes. Her things, scarves, sketchbooks, old movie stubs, waited to be returned or discarded. He didn't know which. He picked up a vinyl record she loved and placed it on the player. The crackling intro filled the silence. A voice sang softly, "Nothing's ever really over." He sank into the floor, back against the couch, eyes closed. For the first time in weeks he allowed himself to feel, not think, not rationalize, just feel. The grief was thick, the nostalgia sharp. But beneath it all was something new, clarity. She was gone, yes. But he was still here. Breathing. Hurting. Healing. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough for now. Nathan received a message that froze him mid-sip. It wasn't from Amelia. It was from her sister, Claire. You should know. She's seen someone. It's serious. The words didn't sting as much as he expected. Instead, they landed like a quiet verdict he'd already accepted. He typed, "Thanks. I figured." Claire replied, "You didn't deserve how it ended." Nathan stared at the blinking cursor. No, he hadn't deserved it. But life doesn't always weigh fairness before handing out heartbreak. He turned the phone face down and walked outside. The sun was setting, casting long orange shadows across the street. He felt strangely calm. There was something freeing in having the truth named aloud. Painful, yes. But clean die. Final. For the first time in months, he realized he didn't need to chase closure. It had found him. Later that evening, Nathan wandered into the bookstore they used to frequent. The bell above the door chimed, sounding like an echo from another life. The smell of aged paper and coffee hit him instantly. He moved through the aisles, his fingers brushing familiar spines. A staff pick shelf caught his eye. Her favorite poetry collection sat front and center. He pulled it down, flipped through the pages, and stopped on a dog-eared one. Some people leave you, and you never leave them. He felt the words burn into him. But he didn't close the book. Instead, he bought it. As he exited into the night air, Nathan realized this wasn't a tribute to her. It was a reminder to himself of what he gave, of how deeply he loved, and how ready he was to start loving something again, even if it was just the silence. The next morning, Nathan sat with his therapist. Weeks ago, he would have resisted the idea. But now, he needed somewhere safe to spill the things he couldn't say to friends. "I feel like I was just left in a room she set on fire," he admitted. The therapist nodded. "And you stayed to put out the flames while she walked out the front door." Nathan's breath hitched. Yes, exactly that. They talked about identity, how love can become a mirror, and when that mirror shatters, we forget who we were. "You're not broken, Nathan. You're grieving," the therapist said gently. "And grief is a sign you loved deeply. Don't let that become a regret." Nathan left the session lighter, not healed, not whole, but no longer drowning. That afternoon, Nathan pulled out his old camera, dusty, neglected. He remembered how he used to love freezing time. Photography was his escape long before Amelia. He walked to the nearby park and started snapping moments. A child laughing as pigeons scattered, an old man feeding birds, a dog leaping into a fountain. Simple things. Honest things. He crouched near the lake's edge and took a shot of his own reflection, rippling in the water. For the first time, it didn't look like a stranger. That click of the shutter wasn't just a photo. It was a quiet reclaiming. He wasn't just mourning a relationship. He was rediscovering himself in the aftermath. One shutter at a time. That evening, Nathan stood in front of a mirror. Not to fix his hair or straighten a collar, but to look, truly look, at himself. The face staring back wasn't perfect. There were dark circles, a faint crease between his brows, a small scar he'd forgotten. But there was also strength. Quiet resilience. He mouthed the words, "You're still here." It wasn't a declaration. It was an acknowledgement. A whisper to the parts of himself that had been ignored while he carried her dreams. This was the new beginning. Not loud, not cinematic, but real. It wasn't about revenge, or even forgiveness. It was about choosing to wake up the next morning. And the next. And maybe, someday, to love again, with eyes wide open. A week later, Nathan received a package. No return address. Inside was a worn notebook, the same one he had seen Amelia carry everywhere but thought she'd taken. Its pages were filled with sketches, monologues, notes, and letters. Dozens of unsent letters. To him. The handwriting wavered across emotions: guilt, love, anger, fear. One entry read, "He sees me like I'm already someone, but I don't even know who I am yet." Another, "If I stay, I'll resent him. If I go, I'll lose him." Nathan read every word, as if dissecting a ghost. These weren't explanations. They were confession. A private war he'd never been part of, yet was wounded by. For the first time he understood. Her betrayal wasn't simple. It was human. Selfish, yes. But also scared. Among the letters, one was sealed. Addressed directly to him. The handwriting was unsteady, smudged like tears had touched the ink. Nathan hesitated before opening it. Inside, Amelia wrote, "You loved a version of me I was still trying to become. I didn't lie to hurt you. I lied to survive my doubt. I met someone who didn't expect me to already be someone. I'm sorry I didn't choose you, but I wasn't even choosing me." Nathan exhaled, paper trembling in his hands. This was the truth he didn't know he needed. She hadn't replaced him. She had fled herself. Her love had been real, imperfect, and unfinished. That didn't undo the pain. But it gave the pain a name. And sometimes, that was enough to begin healing. That night Nathan dreamt of her, not in a dramatic, cinematic flashback, but real. They were in the kitchen, barefoot, laughing as she spilled flour across the counter. A dream memory. He reached for her, but she slowly faded, like mist escaping sunlight. He woke up breathless, staring at the ceiling. The ache was still there but different. Softer. Dreams, he realized, weren't always about hope. They were sometimes the mind's way of letting go gently. That was what he'd do now. Not erase her. Not hate her. Just let go. The version of her that existed in his memories deserved to rest. And the version of him she left behind, he was ready to move forward. The next morning, Nathan boxed up the last of her things. No bitterness. Just quiet resolution. He carried the box down to the curb, the morning chill brushing against his skin. As he placed it down, a breeze lifted a photo from the box. One of the two of them, laughing in bed, sunlight spilling through the curtains. He picked it up, smiled faintly, and slipped it into his coat pocket. Not everything needed to be thrown away. Some parts of love could stay, as reminders, not regrets. He walked back upstairs, emptied but not hollow. Letting go wasn't destruction. It was release. And with each step, he felt something loosen in his chest. Like maybe, finally, he could breathe. Back inside, Nathan lit a candle and placed it on the windowsill. It had been her ritual, a way of marking transition, of calling peace into chaos. The flame flickered gently against the glass, its reflection glowing in the night. He stood silently, watching the dance of light. The apartment didn't feel haunted anymore. Her ghost, once lingering in every corner, now felt like a story already told. He whispered, "Thank you for the love you gave, and the lessons you left behind." Then he sat down, picked up his notebook, and began to write. Not about her. Not about loss. But about rediscovery. About beginnings. The words came slowly at first, but they came. He had finally started writing his own chapter. Days passed, and Nathan received a call from an unknown number. He nearly declined it, but something told him to answer. It was Amelia. Her voice was softer than he remembered. "I didn't think you'd pick up," she said. He stayed silent. She added, I wanted you to hear it from me. I'm staying in New York, with him. It's not about replacing you. I just found something different. Something I needed." Nathan's voice was calm when he replied, "I hope you found what you were looking for." There was a pause, thick with memory. She said, "You were the safest place I ever knew. I'm sorry I left you in the storm." He nodded, though she couldn't see it. "You didn't leave me in the storm, Amelia. I just had to learn to walk through it without you." Then he hung up, not out of anger, but completion. This was the real goodbye. After the call, Nathan took a long walk through the city. No destination, just motion. He passed by theaters lit with brilliant marquees, couples huddled under umbrellas, and the kind of chaos that once overwhelmed him. But now, it didn't. He paused outside a small community art center. A flyer on the door read, "Open mic. Share your story." He stared at it for a long moment. He had always supported others' dreams, but had forgotten he once had his own. He stepped inside, the space buzzing with nervous energy and warm light. The sign-up sheet sat waiting. And for the first time in years, Nathan put his name down. Not for her. Not for anyone else. But for himself. The room was quiet when Nathan took the stage. Just a mic, a stool, and unfamiliar faces waiting. He began slowly. "There was someone I thought I'd grow old with. She left to chase her dream. I thought she left me, but really I left myself behind." He paused, eyes scanning the room. No judgment, only curiosity. he continued. Grief isn't always about death. Sometimes it's about letting go of who we were, of who we thought we'd become. As he spoke, his voice steadied. Words spilled not from pain, but from clarity. When he finished, the silence hung respectfully before applause rose, not thunderous, but warm. Real. Nathan stepped down from the stage lighter, not because he had moved on, but because he had moved through. After the performance, a young woman approached him. Your story. It felt like you were telling mine too, she said. Nathan smiled, surprised by how much those words comforted him. Connection. That was what he'd been missing. Not romance, not validation. Just real human connection. They talked for a while. Nothing flirtatious. Just honesty exchanged without expectation. When he left, he realized how powerful it was to be seen without being needed. To simply exist beside someone and still feel whole. For the first time in months, the future didn't feel like a cliff. It felt like a horizon. Unknown, yes, but reachable. And maybe even beautiful. Back at home, Nathan opened a blank notebook. The old one was filled with her, the grief, the memories, the unraveling. This one was his. He began to write, not about loss, but about newness. The taste of freedom in small moments. The strength in choosing solitude without loneliness. And the grace in learning to rebuild slowly. Untouched paper, he didn't try to force meaning. He just wrote what felt true. Outside, the moon was full, casting silver across the windowsill. He looked up and smiled, not because everything was okay, but because he was okay with not having all the answers. And that, he realized, was its own kind of healing. It had been a few weeks since the open mic night. Nathan had slipped into a rhythm. Mornings were quieter, evenings lonelier. But there was a kind of peace he hadn't known before. He had started working again, photography, his true passion. It felt like the first step in rediscovering who he was outside of her. But as the days passed, a quiet question lingered. Was it enough? One evening, as Nathan sat in his darkened studio, a familiar email alert popped up. It was from Amelia. His breath hitched as he clicked it open. Nathan, I've thought about you every day. I know I hurt you. I'm sorry. The apology was brief, but it sent a rush through his chest. He sat still, phone in hand. The words echoed in his mind, but he didn't respond. Not yet. He wasn't sure if he had anything left to say. Nathan continued with his routine. He walked to the park, took photos of the world around him, and captured fleeting moments. It had become his escape, his therapy. One morning, he caught sight of an old couple sitting on a bench, holding hands. Something about it made him pause. He watched them for a while, noticing the way they looked at each other. No grand gestures, no fireworks, just quiet, lasting love. He took a photo. When he looked at it later, he realized something. The emptiness he had once felt, the one that consumed him after Amelia left, wasn't as heavy anymore. It wasn't gone, but it had been replaced by something new, understanding. He wasn't ready to love again, but he knew, someday, he might. It wouldn't be the same. It couldn't be. But it would be real. And maybe that was enough. The phone rang again, and this time, it was his mother. I'm glad you're getting out more, she said, her voice warm, reassuring. How are you, really? Nathan paused, unsure how to answer. I'm okay, he said, the words slipping out more easily now. I'm learning to be okay. His mother was silent for a beat before replying. You'll be okay, Nathan. I know you will. It wasn't much, but it was enough. That night, he made a decision. He would go back to the gallery, where his work had been displayed once upon a time. He would no longer be weighed down by the person he had been, the person he had lost. It was time to show the world the person he was becoming. Nathan stood in front of his latest gallery display, admiring the photos that now felt like a different version of himself. The subjects were vibrant, alive with color and emotion. No longer did his photographs feel like remnants of a past life. They felt like new beginnings. He watched visitors glance at his work, some pausing longer than others. But there was no rush, no anxious need for validation. He was proud, but in a quiet way. As he walked past the paintings, he spotted a familiar face in the crowd. Claire. She was standing by a photo of a sunset, her eyes welling up with emotion. When she noticed Nathan, she smiled faintly and approached him. "It's beautiful," she said. "She would have been proud of you." The words were heavy, but not in the way they used to be. This wasn't about Amelia anymore. It was about him. He had made it. Later that night, Nathan stood by the window in his apartment, looking out at the city. The lights below twinkled. The noise seemed distant, almost muffled by the silence in his chest. His phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message from Amelia. "I'm not sure what I expected by reaching out, but I hope you're okay. I hope you're happy." Nathan read the message and smiled faintly. His heart didn't ache the way it used to. He typed back, "I'm getting there. And I hope you are too." He sent it before he could overthink it. It wasn't a grand closure. It didn't need to be. The window was open, the night air cool, and the city lights beyond were no longer a reminder of loss, but of what he had gained. He had let go. He had moved on. And for the first time, he believed in the possibility of the future. It had been months since Nathan had truly felt at peace with his journey. He sat on the same balcony where so many sleepless nights had passed, staring out at the city, now a little less unfamiliar. His thoughts weren't filled with her anymore. The past wasn't a ghost haunting him. It was simply part of the story that made him who he was. The phone hadn't buzzed in days, and that was fine. For the first time, the quiet didn't feel empty. It felt whole. He took a deep breath, the cool night air filling his lungs. Amelia was a chapter of his life, but it was no longer the whole book. As he stood up, he whispered to the night sky, "I'm okay now." It wasn't a declaration to anyone but himself. But in that moment, it felt like freedom. Nathan sat at a small cafe the following day, his camera beside him, a notebook open in front of him. His pen moved across the paper, forming words without thought, as if they had always been there, waiting to be written. The ideas had come back. The inspiration, too. The work he'd once abandoned for the sake of someone else was now his again. He'd found something new, purpose. Not the kind that came from achieving someone else's dreams, but from nurturing his own. And maybe, just maybe, that was the most powerful dream of all. A couple at the next table laughed softly, their shared warmth a contrast to his solitude. He didn't envy them. He simply existed in the moment, content with the space he now occupied. His life was his again. The following weekend, Nathan revisited the art gallery that had once displayed his work. The new pieces hung alongside the old, and he found himself standing in front of the one he had taken at the park, the one of the elderly couple. A warm sense of pride washed over him. He had created something real, something beautiful. He was no longer holding on to a love that wasn't his to keep. As he turned to leave, a young woman who had visited the gallery before caught his eye. She smiled at him, a gesture of recognition. He smiled back, the weight in his chest light. There were no promises here, no expectations, just an unspoken understanding that life had a way of moving forward, and maybe, so had he. That evening, as Nathan walked home, the city streets felt different. They weren't just the backdrop of his life. They were part of the story he was writing for himself. He passed a familiar coffee shop, the one where he and Amelia had shared countless cups, but now it was just another stop along his journey. He didn't feel bitterness, only gratitude for the memories that shaped him. Walking through the door of his apartment, he was greeted by silence, peaceful, serene. He sank into the couch, closed his eyes, and exhaled. "Thank you," he whispered, not to Amelia, but to the person he had become in her absence. He had learned to fill the silence with his own strength, and in that quiet, he finally understood that the future wasn't something to fear, it was something to welcome. The next morning, Nathan awoke to the sound of birds outside his window. The first rays of sunlight filtered through the curtains, and for a moment he simply listened to the quiet hum of the world around him. His phone buzzed on the nightstand, but he didn't reach for it. Instead, he stood, stretched, and walked over to the window, looking out at the new day. There was no sense of urgency, no need to rush. The world was waiting for him, but for the first time in a long time, he felt ready. As he opened the window to let in the fresh air, he whispered softly, "This is where I begin." It wasn't the end of his story, nor was it the beginning of something new. It was simply the next chapter. And that he knew was all he needed.